Hello everyone. Today we will discuss Chapter 15, Central Asian Contacts and their results. The period which began in about 200 BC did not witness a large empire like that of the Mauryas, but is notable for intimate and widespread contacts between Central Asia and India. In Eastern India, Central India, and the Deccan, the Mauryas were succeeded by a number of native rulers such as the Shungas, the Kanvas, and the Shatavahanas. In northwestern India, they were succeeded by a number of ruling dynasties from Central Asia. The Indo-Greeks, a series of invasions took place from about 200 BC. The first to cross the Hindu Kush were the Greeks, who ruled Bactria, lying south of the Oxus River in the area covered by North Afghanistan. The invaders came one after another, but some of them ruled at one and the same time on parallel lines. One important cause of invasions was the weakness of Seleucid Empire, which had been established in Bactria and adjoining areas of Iran called Parthia. On account of growing pressure from the Scythian tribes, the later Greek rulers were unable to hold their power in this area. With the construction of the Chinese wall, the Scythians were now not in a position to push forward into China. So they turned their attention towards the neighboring Greeks and Parthians. Pushed by Scythian tribes, the Bactrian Greeks were forced to invade India. The successors of Ashoka were too weak to, to stem the tide of foreign invasions, which started during the period. Okay. Figure 15.1 shows Indo-Greek coins. Okay. The first to invade India were the Greeks, who are called the Indo-Greeks or Bactrian Greeks. In the beginning of the 2nd century BC, the Indo-Greeks occupied a large number of northwestern India, much larger than that conquered by Alexander. Okay, figure 11 shows Central Asian contacts. In the beginning of the 2nd century BC, the Indo-Greeks occupied a large part of the northwestern India, much larger than that conquered by Alexander. It is said that they pushed forward as far as Ayodhya and Patliputra, but the Greeks failed to establish united rule in India. The Greek dynasties ruled northwestern India on parallel lines at one and the same time. The most famous Indo-Greek ruler, Menander, 165 to 145 BC. He is also known as by the name Menander Milinda. He had his capital at Shakala, modern Sialkot in Punjab, and he invaded the Ganga Yamuna Doab. He was converted to Buddhism by Nagasena, who is also known as Nagarjuna. Menander asked Nagasena many questions relating to Buddhism. These questions and Nagasena's answers were recorded in the form of a book known as Milinda Pano or the Questions of Milinda. The Indo-Bactrian role is important in the history of India because of the large number of coins which the Greeks issued. The Indo-Greeks were the first rulers in India to issue coins which can be definitely attributed to the kings. This is not possible in the case of the early punch-marked coins, which cannot be assigned with certainty to any dynasty. The Indo-Greeks were the first to issue gold coins in India. The Indo-Greeks were the first to issue gold coins in India, which increased in number under the Kushans. The Greek rule is also memorable on account of the introduction of Hellenistic art features in the northwest frontier of India, giving rise to Gandhara art. Okay. The Shagas. The Greeks were followed by the Shagas, who controlled a much larger part of India than the Greek did. There were 5 branches of the Shagas with their seats of power in different parts of India and Afghanistan. One branch of the Shagas settled in Afghanistan. Another branch of the Shagas settled in Punjab with Taxila as their capital. A third branch settled in Mathura, where they ruled for about 2 centuries. Okay. Figure 15.2 shows copper plate inscription of about the 1st century AD from Kalavan near Taxila. Its script is Garoshti, which was written from right to left in the form of Arabic. Yeah, okay, like Arabic. The language is Prakrit. The Nagari rendering and English translation of the first two lines are given below. 23rd day of the month of Shravana in the year 134 of Asus. On this day, the lay worshipper Chandra B, who is the daughter of Grihapadi Dharma and wife of Bhadravala, installs the relics of Buddha at Chatrashilaga. Okay. A fourth branch established its hold even over Western India, where they continued to rule till the 4th century AD. A fifth branch of the Shagas established its power in the Upper Deccan. The Shagas did not meet much effective resistance from the rulers and people of India. In about 58 BC, we hear of a king of Ujjain who effectively fought against the Shagas and succeeded in driving them out in his time. He called himself Vikramaditya, and an era called Vikrama Samvad is reckoned from the event of his victory over the Shagas in 58 BC. From this time onwards, Vikramaditya became a coveted title. Whoever achieved anything great adopted this title, just as the Roman emperors adopted the title of Caesar in order to emphasize their great power. As a result of this practice, we have as many as 14 Vikramaदिtyas in the Indian history, and title continued to be fashionable with the Indian kings till the 12th century AD, and it was especially prevalent in the Western India and Western Deccan. Although the Shagas established their rule in different parts of the country, only those who ruled in the Western India held power for any considerable length of time. For about 4 centuries or so, the most famous Shaga ruler in India was Rudradaman I, AD 130 to 150. He ruled not only over Sindh, Kutch, and Gujarat, but had also recovered from the Shadavanas, Kongan, the Narmada Valley, Malwa, and Kathiawar. He is famous in history because of the repairs he undertook to improve the Sudarshana Lake in the semi-arid zone of Kathiawar. Rudradaman I, Sudarshana Lake. Rudradaman I, Sudarshana Lake. Okay, this lake had been in use for irrigation for a long time and was old as the time of the Mauryas. Rudradaman was a great lover of Sanskrit. Although a foreigner settled in India, he issued the first ever long inscription in chaste Sanskrit. All the earlier longer inscriptions that we have in the country were composed in Prakrit. The Parthians. Next is the Parthians. The Shaga domination in the northwestern India was followed by that of the Parthians, and in many ancient Indian Sanskrit texts, the two peoples are together mentioned as Shaga Pahlavas. Shaga Pahlavas. In fact, they ruled over this country on parallel lines for some time. Originally, the Parthians lived in Iran, from where they moved to India. In comparison with the Greeks and the Shagas, they occupied only a small portion of northwestern India in the 1st century. The most famous Parthian king was Gondophares, in whose reign St. Thomas is said to have come to India for the propagation of Christianity. In course of time, the Parthians, like the Shagas before them, became an integral part of Indian polity and society. The Kushans. The Parthians were followed by the Kushans, who are also called Yuchis or Tocharians. The Kushans were one of the 5 clans into which the Yuchi tribe was divided, a nomadic people from the steppes of the North Central Asia, living in the neighborhood of China. The Kushans first occupied Bactria or North Afghanistan, where they displaced the Shagas. Gradually, they moved to the Kabul Valley and seized Gandhara by crossing the Hindu Kush, replacing the rule of the Greeks and the Parthians in these areas. Finally, they set up their authority over the lower Indus basin and the greater part of the Gangetic basin. Their empire extended from the Oxus to the Ganga, from Khorasan in Central Asia to Varanasi in Uttar Pradesh. A good part of the Central Asia now included in USSR, a portion of Iraq, Iran, a portion of Afghanistan, almost the whole of Pakistan, and almost the whole of northern India were brought under the one rule by Kushans. This created a unique opportunity for the commingling of peoples and cultures, and the process gave rise to a new type of culture which embraced five modern countries. We come across two successive dynasties of Kushans. The first dynasty was founded by a house of chiefs called Cadphises, and who ruled for 28 years from about AD 50. It had two kings. The first was Cadphises I, who issued coins south of the Hindu Kush. He minted coppers in imitation of Roman coins. The second king was Cadphises II, who issued a large number of gold money and spread his kingdom east of the Indus. The house of the Cadphises was succeeded by that of Kanishka. Its king extended the Kushan power over Upper India and Lower Indus Basin. The early Kushan kings issued numerous gold coins with a higher gold content than is found in the Gupta coins. Although the gold coins of the Kushans are found mainly west of the Indus, their inscriptions are distributed not only in northwestern India and Sindh, but also in Mathura, Shravasti, Kaushambi, and Varanasi. Hence, they had set up their authority in the greater part of the Gangetic Basin. Kushan coins, inscriptions, sculptures, and structures found in Mathura found that it was their second capital in India. The first being Purushapura or Peshawar, where Kanishka erected a monastery and a huge stupa or relic tower, which excited the wonder of foreign travelers. The most famous Kushan ruler was Kanishka. Although outside the borders of India, he seems to have suffered defeat at the hands of Chinese. He is known to history because of two reasons. First, he started an era in AD 78, which is known as Shaka era and is used by the government of India. Secondly, Kanishka extended his wholehearted patronage to Buddhism. Okay. 15.3 Kanishka's coins. Kanishka's coin. Okay. He held a Buddhist council in Kashmir, where the doctrines of Mahayana form of Buddhism were finalized. Kanishka was also a great patron of art and Sanskrit literature. The successors of Kanishka continued to rule in northwestern India till about AD 230, and some of them bore typical Indian names such as Vasudeva. The Kushan Empire in Afghanistan and in the west area west of the Indus was supplanted in the mid-3rd century AD by Sasanian power, which rose in Iran, but Kushan principalities continued to exist in India for about a century. The Kushan authority seems to have lingered in the Kabul Valley, Kapisa, Bactria, Khorasan, and Sogdiana, identical with Bokhara and Samarkand. In the 3rd, 4th centuries, many Kushan coins, inscriptions, and terracottas have been found in these areas, especially at a place called Toprak Kala in Khorasan. A huge Kushan palace of the 3rd, 4th centuries has been unearthed. It housed an administrative archives containing inscriptions and documents written in Aramic script and Khorasmian language. Impact of the Central Asian contacts. Structures and pottery. The Shaka Kushan phase registered a distinct advance in building activities. Excavations have revealed several layers of structures, sometimes more than half a dozen at various sites in North India. In them, we find the use of burned bricks for flooring and that of tiles for both flooring and roofing. But the use of surki and tiles may not have been adopted from outside. The period is also marked by the construction of Brick wells. It's it is it's a typical pottery is red ware, both plain and polished with medium to fine fabric. The distinctive pots are sprinklers and sprouted channels. They remind us of red pottery with thin fabric found in the same period in Kushan layers in Soviet Central Asia. Red pottery techniques were widely known in Central Asia, and they are found in the regions like Fargana, which were on the peripheries of the Kushan cultural zone. Trade and technology. The Shagas and Kushans added new ingredients to Indian culture and enriched it immensely. They settled in India for good and completely identified themselves with its culture. Since they did not have their script, language, or religion, they adopted these elements of culture from India. They became an integral part of Indian society to which they contributed considerably. They introduced better cavalry and use of riding horse on a large scale. They made common the use of reins and saddles, which appear in the Buddhist cultures of the 2nd and 3rd centuries AD. The Shagas and Kushans were excellent horsemen. Their passionate love for horsemanship is attested by numerous Equestrian terracotta figures of Kushan times discovered from the Bagram or in Afghanistan. Some of these foreign horsemen were heavily armored and fought with spears and lances. Possibly, they also used some kind of toe stirrup made of rope which facilitated their movements. The Shagas and Kushans introduced turban, tunic, trousers, and heavy long coat. Even now, the Afghans and Punjabis wear turbans, and the sherwani is a successor of the long coat. The Central Asians also brought in cap, helmet, and boots, which were used by warriors. Because of these advantages, they made a clean sweep of their opponents in Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India. Later, when this military technology spread in the country, the dependent princes turned them to good use against their former conquerors. The coming of the foreigners established intimate contacts between Central Asia and India. As a result, India received a good deal of gold from the Atlas Mountains in Central Asia. Gold also may have been received in India through trade with Roman Empire. The Kushans controlled the Silk Route, which started from China and passed through their empire in Central Asia and Afghanistan to Iran in West and Western Asia, which formed part of the Roman Empire in the Eastern Mediterranean zone. This road was a source of great income to the Kushans, and they built a large, prosperous empire because of the tolls levied from the traders. It is significant that the Kushans were the first rulers in India to issue gold coins on a wide scale. Gold coins, Kushans, okay. Polity. The Central Asian conquerors imposed their rule on numerous petty native princes. This led to the development of feudatory organization. The Kushans adopted the pompous title of King of Kings, which indicates their supremacy over numerous small princes. The Shagas and Kushans strengthened the idea of divine origin of kingship. The Kushan kings were called sons of God. This title was adopted by the Kushans from the Chinese, who called their king the son of heaven. It was used in India naturally to stress the royal authority. The Hindu lawgiver Manu asked the people to respect the king even if he is a child, because he is a great god ruling in the form of a human being. They also introduced the satrap system of government. Kushans also introduced the satrap system of government. The empire was divided into numerous satrapies, and each satrapy was placed under the rule of a satrap. Some curious practices, such as hereditary dual rule, two kings ruling in the same kingdom at one and at the same time, were introduced. We find that father and son ruled jointly at one and the same time. Figure 15.4 shows the pillar of Heliodorus near Vidisa. Okay, pillar of Heliodorus near Vidisa. Okay, thus it appears that there was less centralization under these rulers. The foreigners also introduced the practice of military governorship. This was done by the Greeks, who appointed their governors called strategos. Military governors were necessary to maintain the power of the foreign rulers over the conquered people. New elements in Indian society. The Greeks, Shagas, Parthians, and Kushans ultimately lost their identity in India. They became completely Indianized in the course of time. Since most of them came as conquerors, they were absorbed in Indian society as warrior class, that is, as Kshatriyas. Their placement in the Brahminical society was explained in the in a curious way. The lawgiver Manu stated that the Shagas and Parthians were the Kshatriyas who had fallen from their duties. In other words, they came to be considered as second class Kshatriyas. In no other period of ancient Indian history were foreigners assimilated into Indian society on such a large scale as they were in the post-modern times. Religion. Some of the foreign rulers were converted to Vaishnavism, which means the worship of Vishnu, the god of protection and preservation. The Greek ambassador called Heliodorus Heliodorus set up a pillar in honor of Vishnu near Vidisha, headquarters of Vidisha district in Madhya Pradesh. A new a few other rulers adopted Buddhism. The famous Greek ruler Menander was converted to Buddhism. The questions and the answers that he exchanged from with the Buddhist teacher Nagasena, also called Nagarjuna, constitute a good source of the cultural history of Mauryan period. The Kushan rulers worshipped both Shiva and Buddha, and the images of these two gods appeared on the Kushan coins. Several Kushan rulers were worshippers of Vishnu. This was certainly the case with the Kushan ruler Vasudeva, whose very name is synonym for a Krishna, who was worshipped as an incarnation of Vishnu. The origin of Mahayana Buddhism. The contact with foreigners brought about changes in the Indian religions. This especially happened to Buddhism. Buddhism is in its original form was too puritanical and too abstract for foreigners who wanted something concrete and intelligible. This did not appreciate the philosophical doctrines of Buddhism emphasized by the existing Buddhist schools. They wanted something which they could easily understand and which could satisfy their religious cravings. So they developed a new form of Buddhism called Mahayana, or the Great Wheel, in which the image of the Buddha began to be worshipped. So in Mahayana Buddhism, image of Buddha were worshipped. Okay, the doors of this sect were open to all sections of people. Those who did not subscribe to the newly founded sect came to be known as followers of Hinayana, or the small wheel. Fortunately for Mahayana, the Kanishka became its great patron. Kanishka became a patron of Mahayana Buddhism, KM, MK. He convened a council in Kashmir where the Buddhist teachings were engraved on sheets of copper and deposited under a stupa. We do not know the contents of these inscriptions because this stupa has not been discovered so far. Kanishka set up many stupas in the memory of Buddha. The Gandhara art. The foreign princes became enthusiastic patrons of Indian art and literature, and they showed the zeal characteristic of new converts. The Kushan Empire brought together masons and other artisans trained in different schools and countries. Indian craftsmen came to contact with the Greeks and Romans, especially in the northwestern frontier of India, in Gandhara. This gave rise to a new kind of art in which images of Buddha were made in Greco-Roman style. The hair of the Buddha was fashioned in the Greco-Roman style. The influence of the Gandhara art also spread to Mathura. It was primarily a center of indigenous art. Mathura produced beautiful images of Buddha, but is also famous for the headless erect statue of Kanishka, whose name is inscribed on its lower part. Okay. Figure 15.5 shows view of the remains of ancient city of Taxila, 1st century AD. Okay. Figure 15.6 shows image of Buddha, Gandhara. Okay. It also produced several stone images of Vardhamana Mahavira. The Madura school of art flourished in early centuries of the Christian era, and its products made of red sandstone are found even outside Madura. Okay. At present, the Madura Museum possesses the largest collection of sculptures of Kushan times in India. During the same period, we noticed beautiful works of art at several places south of the Vindhyas. Beautiful Buddhist caves were constructed out of rocks in Maharashtra. In Andhra Pradesh, Nagarjuna Konda and Amaravati became great centers of Buddhist art. In Andhra Pradesh, Nagarjuna Konda and Amaravati became great centers of Buddhist art, and the stories connected to the Buddha came to be portrayed in numerous panels. The earliest panels dealing with Buddhism are found at Gaya, Sanji, and Barhut, and belong to 2nd century BC. But we notice further development in the sculpture of the early centuries of the Christian era. Okay, 15.7 shows sculpture from Madura. Okay, 15.8 shows Sanji Stupa, a view of the gateway. Okay, literature and learning. The foreign princes patronized and cultivated Sanskrit literature. The earliest specimen of Kavya style is found in the inscription of Rudradaman in Kathiawar in about AD 150. From now onwards, inscriptions began to be composed in chaste Sanskrit, although the use of Prakrit in composing inscriptions continued till the 4th century AD and even later. It seems that some of the great creative writers, such as Ashwagosha, enjoyed the patronage of Kushans. So Ashwagosha enjoyed the patronage of Kushans. Ashwagosha wrote the Buddha Charita. Who wrote Buddha Charita? Ashwagosha. Ashwagosha wrote Buddha Charita, which is a biography of Buddha. He also composed Saundarananda. 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 Who wrote Saundarananda? Ashwagosha, which is a fine example of Sanskrit Kavya. The progress of Mahayana Buddhism led to the composition of numerous Avadanas. Most of these texts were composed in what is known as Buddhist hybrid Sanskrit. Okay, their one objective was to preach the teachings of Mahayana Buddhism to the people. Some of the important books of this genre were Mahavastu and the Divyavadana. The foreigners also contributed to the development of the Indian theatre by introducing the use of curtain. Since the curtain was borrowed from the Greeks, it became to be known as Yavaniga. Curtain is known as Yavaniga. This word was derived from the term Yavana, which was Sanskrit form of Ionian, a branch of the Greeks known to the ancient Indians. At a later stage, the term Yavana came to be used for all kinds of foreigners. Okay, 15.9 shows a panel from Barhut. Okay, 15.10 shows silver coins. Okay, science and technology. Indian astronomy and astrology profited from the contact with Greeks. We notice many Greek terms about the movement of planets in Sanskrit texts. Indian astrology came to be influenced by Greek ideas, and the Greek term horoscope was derived from the term Hora Shastra, used for astrology in Sanskrit. However, the Indians did not owe anything striking to the Greeks in medicine, botany, and chemistry. These three subjects were dealt with Charaga and Sushruta. The Charaga Samhita contains the names of numerous plants and herbs from which drugs are to be prepared for the use of patients. The processes laid down for the pounding and mixing of plants give us an idea of the developed knowledge of chemistry in ancient India. For the cure of ailments, for the cure of ailments, for the cure of for the cure of ailments, the ancient history, Indian physician relied chiefly on plants, for which Sanskrit word is Aushadhi, and as a result of medicine itself came to be known as Aushadhi. Okay, in the field of technology also, the Indians seem to have been profited from the contact with the Central Asians. Kanishka is represented as wearing trousers and long boots. Possibly the practice of making leather shoes began in India during this period. In any case, the Kushan copper coins in India were imitations of the Roman coins. Similarly, gold coins in India were struck by the Kushans in imitation of Roman gold coins. We hear of two embassies being exchanged between the Indian kings and the Roman kings. Embassies were sent from India to the court of the Roman Emperor Augustus in AD 27 to 28, and also to the Roman Emperor Trajan in AD 110 to 120. 110 to 20. Okay. Thus, the contacts of Roman with ancient India may have introduced new practices in technology. Working in glass during this period was especially influenced by foreign ideas and practices. In no other period in India did glass making make such progress as it did during this period. Okay, we have discussed chapter 15. In the next video, we will discuss chapter 16, the age of the Shadavahanas. Okay, thank you for listening me. We'll see you next class. Thank you very much.